Hi, in this episode, I'll show you the transformation this car went through after the previous owner hit the right side against a guardrail. This is my favourite BMW E61 with a 3-litre diesel engine, which I'll restore to its former glory by replacing all the damaged parts with new ones matched to the same colour, without the need for painting or filler. During the restoration, I'll replace the front and rear doors, the front fender, and the mirror. 4 elements that at first might not seem like a challenge. But are they really that simple? Let's see which parts went smoothly and which made me stop and think about what to do next. Let's get started! First, a very important note. We'll be working in direct contact with the airbag, so for safety reasons, I'll start by disconnecting the battery. Why? Because we can never be 100% sure that the airbag sensor won't trigger it during the process. Theoretically, it shouldn't, but it's not worth the risk since repairing a deployed airbag is expensive and time-consuming. I open the trunk and the compartment with the battery. First, I disconnect and set aside the negative minus cable and only then do the same with the positive plus one. This order is very important. This way, we protect the car's electronics from unwanted electrical impulses that could occur if the order were reversed. Helpful tip. If your car has a power lock, when closing the trunk, place a piece of cardboard or cloth over the latch, otherwise you won't be able to open it and will have to access the battery from inside the car, which is inconvenient. After waiting 10 minutes from disconnecting the power, I open the door and remove the cap hiding one screw. On the other side, there is another cap and a second screw. We must remove both to take the door panel off. A moment later, I take a plastic trim tool and pry the clips around the panel. Never use metal tools, because you can scratch the door or break clips that are hard to repair. When detaching the door panel, hold it firmly so it doesn't fall to the ground. There are still electrical wires connected behind it, and you don't want to damage them by force. My method to do this gently is to support the panel with one hand and a knee by the handle while using the other hand to unplug the connectors shown on the screen. You don't need to remember which wire goes where for 2 reasons. First, their lengths usually only allow them to fit in one place, and second, each plug has a unique shape, so it's impossible to insert it into the wrong socket. Now, I disconnect the power for the mirror controls and the heating cable. If you're ordering a new mirror, the most common question will be, how many pins does it have? This refers to this exact connector, as the number of pins determines compatibility between versions. I remove the upper door trim, which isn't screwed in any way. You can simply do it with your fingers. Underneath, you'll find 3 bolts holding the mirror, which we now need to unscrew. It's worth remembering where the one bolt with a different head goes later to ensure proper stability of the new mirror after installation. I roughly place the plastic trim back in position so it doesn't get in the way and gently close the door. From the outside, I now pull out the broken mirror from its mounting holes with one firm motion. It should come out easily without any major issues. Just be careful not to damage the rubber grommet that the power cable passes through. Next, I unscrew the single bolt securing the door wiring cover. To give myself a bit more room to work, I also remove the bolt that locks the door in the intermediate position. Then I watch my fingers carefully so the closing door doesn't pinch them. These doors are really heavy. To remove and disconnect the electrical plug, you must first lift it upward, then pull it toward you. The connector itself has a latch that must be released before the plug can be removed. Finally, there are 2 hinge mounting bolts which, once unscrewed, allow the whole door to be taken off. I carefully remove the door and set it aside in a safe place. Be careful when carrying it. They're seriously heavy and awkward. We've reached the turning point where we start reassembling all the parts. But before I mount the new door, I'll take advantage of the easy access to clean the areas I can reach now. Right after that, I place the hinges of the new door in position so they fit securely to the car. First, I tighten the 2 hinge bolts as they provide the main support for the new part. Once everything holds firmly and there's still enough space for my hands, I use this moment to reconnect the electrical plug and secure it in its socket. Finally, I tighten the door stop, which controls how the door opens and closes so I can continue working without having to hold the door anymore. Finally, I tighten the electrical housing to the car's frame, making sure everything is sealed so that no water can get in. I'll also remove all the wiring from the old door and transfer it to the new one, since my original cables are in much better condition than the ones that came with the replacement. If your cables are fine, you don't need to do this step. Now, if you've already chosen the new mirror with the correct number of pins, first insert the plug with the wires through the rubber grommet, then align the triangular mount with all the screw holes so that everything fits tightly together. Next, arrange the wires properly so they have enough space and don't bend where they shouldn't. If everything looks good, screw in the triangular mount evenly from all sides. Since we're working close to the window, I want to avoid putting too much stress on it. Once I'm sure everything is securely in place, I put the plastic cover back in its original position. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. In return, I will record more episodes about dealing with BMWs. I gently insert the electrical connector into the control module. The exact socket is highlighted on the screen, although you shouldn't have any trouble matching it. Next, I place the decorative door panel back on, making sure to reconnect all the plugs to their proper locations. Another important thing, make sure the lock rod tip aligns perfectly with the hole shown on the screen. Otherwise, the door mechanism might jam when you try to open it. Finally, I make sure all the clips have snapped back into place. If everything fits properly, I tighten the 2 screws we removed earlier. When closing the door for the first time, do it slowly to ensure that all the inner panel clips are properly seated. Now I'll show you how I replaced the front fender. And to be honest, this was probably the most difficult part of the entire replacement. You'll find out why in just a moment. The whole process should take about 1 to 2 hours. I start by removing the 2 inner screws. There's not much space for my hands since my car is in the garage, but with the doors fully open, it'll be much easier for you. Once that's done, I open the hood to remove the rubber seal that protects the interior from water, and after taking off the covers from the plastic rain channel, I pull that part out as well. Next, I remove the 3 screws from the front section of the fender, being careful not to let any of them fall inside. Then I move to the upper part, where there's another screw that needs to be removed by hand because of how close it sits to the hood. At the very top, there's one more spot that requires using an extension bar. And here, you need to be careful not to hit the windshield. Once that screw is out, the entire section on this side becomes loose, and I gently pull it to make sure it has some play. Now, unfortunately, I've got some bad news. We're moving on to the lower section, which is much trickier to remove. If you don't like getting frustrated or have larger hands, it'll be easier for you if you take off the wheel first. However, I'll show you how to remove the entire fender without taking the wheel off because there's a clever way to do it, and I'll show you that trick in a moment. First, I unscrew the 3 bolts that hold the plastic wheel arch cover. They may be dirty with sand, rusty, or badly damaged, so there's a good chance you'll have to replace them with new ones. After removing them all, I bend the plastic slightly to make room to fit my hand inside between the bumper and the car's frame. Now, a little trick that will make our job much easier. I turn the wheels to the left to create more space, which is more than enough. Now, under this panel, we need to reach 3 bolts that fasten the fender and the bumper. I've marked them on the screen. With the right extension, they can be unscrewed quite easily. For me, it was easiest to lie down on the ground to reach them at the correct angle. Continuing on the other side of the fender, there are 3 caps that honestly can't really be removed gently. Every time I've tried, it always ended up with me having to replace them with new ones. Absolutely every time. I remove them using my trusted method, being careful not to damage the paint, and then unscrew 2 bolts deeper inside the wheel arch at the bottom, as well as 1 bolt located slightly higher than the others. You're probably wondering how many are left to remove. And unfortunately, I have to disappoint you because there are still a few more points we need to tackle. Underneath, there's a bolt screwed directly into the fender, which I now unscrew. A bit further on, there's another one securing the side skirt cover, and we also need to remove that one, as it will give us a bit more room in the later stage. Now I gently move the side skirt cover aside, and being careful with the paint, I unscrew the 2 bolts that hold the lower part of the fender, making sure not to scratch the surface. To be safe, you can place a piece of cloth or cardboard under the wrench. Next, I bend the wheel arch liner just enough to fit my hand inside. And here's the good news. I unscrew the final bolt deep inside, which I've now marked in the photo using a suitably long extension. After this step, we can finally remove the entire damaged panel and reveal the beautiful interior of our car. If this video was helpful to you, please leave a like and a comment. It really helps me create more content for you. Thank you. Once I clean any potentially dirty areas, I take the new color-matched fender and carefully position it in place. I align all the mounting points slowly and without using force, because it's better to spend an extra 5 minutes on fitting than 3 hours later repainting or fixing a scratched or dented part, so take your time. I start the assembly by tightening the 2 screws in the sill cover. I gently move the entire panel aside and tighten everything without scratching the paint. If you previously removed the entire panel, you can reinstall it at this point. Next, I secure the 3 screws located in the upper section under the hood. This will prevent the panel from flexing while tightening. Continuing, I move to the 2 screws near the windshield and the hood hinge, placing and tightening them. Then, I reinstall the plastic spacer that was previously in this spot. After that, I place the drainage channel back into its guide and attach the 2 caps that lock it in position. Finally, I screw on the nut at the very top. The last element in this area is the seal, which I slide onto the edge so it fits firmly in place. Now comes our favorite stage, the one with the worst access. I lie down on the ground and tighten the front section that you can see on the screen. Before tightening everything completely, it's important to align the fender and bumper properly so that nothing sticks out and all parts fit together nicely, because any misalignment here will be visible. I place the plastic wheel arch cover back in its position, and as you can see, there's a small gap between the fender and the bumper, but we'll eliminate it shortly by tightening the cover screws. I start with the one that aligns the parts nicely, but unfortunately, in my case, it's already quite worn out. Inside, there's a small metal clip that no longer holds properly, so I'll need to replace it to make everything fit well. Then I tighten the screws below to protect the entire interior from excess water entering inside. Then, the same thing on the other side. I attach the proper extension and tighten the screw that secures the fender to the beam at the end. Next, there are 2 screws at the very bottom, which will also reinforce the previously removed side sill of our car. One of the final steps is to place the plastic wheel arch cover back in its position and fasten it with all the screws, as well as install the 3 caps that I previously removed by force. Finally, I open the door and screw in the last 2 bolts at the top, the same ones we started the disassembly with. This is the final result after the replacement. I've already done the front door, the mirror, and the fender. At this point, there's just one element left to repair: the rear door. Let's get straight to work. I start by slightly opening the door, where at the bottom there's a cover that needs to be removed to access the screw, and another one near the main hinge, which I also remove. Next, I unscrew both screws that hold the trim, keeping them aside and noting which was on top and which on the bottom. Using a plastic trim tool, I pry off all the clips holding the panel, trying to do it as gently as possible so I don't break any of them. And for the same reason, I don't use any metal tools. Later, with as much care as possible, I remove the panel, making sure not to break anything or detach the power cable from the electric window. By tilting the panel, we'll have enough room to put a hand in and unplug it from the socket without force. Additionally, we need to disconnect the cable that opens the lock. Just pull it in this direction and it will easily slide out of its socket. I have marked both elements in the picture. I set the whole panel aside, and from the inside, I unscrew the 2 main hinge bolts, which are located exactly here. Don't worry, after removing them, the door will still be held safely. Next, I address the door stop that limits opening. Warning: after loosening it, be careful not to pinch your fingers because these doors are really heavy. Finally, there is 1 bolt left to unscrew that secures the door's electrical connector, shown in the picture, and a small tip. To disconnect this plug later, you'll need to lift it slightly upwards so the lower part comes out of its slot, which makes pulling it out easier. After freeing all the components, I grab the entire door and with a firm motion, pull it off the hinges, setting it aside. Be careful. They're really heavy, much heavier than they look. Then, I mount the new door in the same way, remembering that the whole structure isn't yet stabilized and the door could fall off at any moment. That's why I first tighten the doorstop bolt, which lets me hold the door in a convenient position. I also remove all the old electrical cables because the wiring in my previous door was in much better condition. I transfer it over. It's just 5 extra minutes of work, but it can help avoid issues with window operation in the future. After transferring all the wires, I position the rubber seal leading into the door and make sure it's properly aligned, ensuring that the rubber sits evenly all the way around. Then I plug the connector into the socket in the frame and secure it with the screw we removed earlier. I install the sound insulation, which I also took from the old door since it's still in excellent condition with no damage, and I reconnect the central lock power connector. Now comes the step that might surprise some of you. Why am I attaching the insulation with tape? Most people usually use special silicone. Why didn't I do that? Because within the next 3 months, I'll be removing this panel again, and I don't want to bond it permanently to the door. The tape is a very good temporary solution that fully does its job. I hook the handle cable to the door latch. The end with the stopper just needs to be slid into its designated place. Then I can install the decorative panel, first connecting the window switch wire and the handle cable, both of which I showed you earlier. I make sure all the clips snap securely into place by pressing the panel evenly on all sides. Once everything is properly aligned, I tighten the 2 screws for the main door hinge. At this stage, to make opening and closing smoother, you can also lightly lubricate the hinge. Finally, I fasten the 2 screws for the decorative panel, paying attention to which one goes on top and which on the bottom, and add the 2 caps that complete the look with a touch of class and style. To finish, I gently close the door to check if everything works as it should, and I also test the central locking system to ensure it opens and closes properly. And it looks like everything's perfect. You can say the job's done right. After that, I reconnect the battery. And once again, the order in which you attach the terminals is absolutely crucial. Always connect the positive terminal first and only then the negative one. This way, we protect the power module from unnecessary strain. Once this step is done, the job is complete. This is the final result. You can clearly see a huge difference, although this project still needs a few small finishing touches. I didn't notice it earlier, but one of the windows is tinted. So in the next episode, I'll replace it with the glass from the old door. I'll also restore those black decorative panels. So see you in the next episode.